The Missouri Senate candidate who made controversial comments about the emotionally charged issue of rape says he is not dropping out of the race, even though he is facing intense pressure from his own party. Republican Congressman Todd Akin has until this afternoon to withdraw his campaign against Democratic Senator Claire McCaskill. Mr. Akin got into trouble after saying this in an interview on Sunday.
It seems to me, first of all, from what I understand from doctors, that's really rare. If it's a legitimate rape, the female body has ways to try to shut that whole thing down. But let's assume that maybe that didn't work or something. You know, I think there should be some punishment, but the punishment ought to be in the rapist and not attacking the child.
Congressman Akin apologized for that comment, saying he misspoke, but both Democrats and Republicans are still outraged about what he said. Joining us from Washington, Steve Chaggaris, executive Washington editor for CBSNews.com. Steve, good morning to you.
Good morning.
So Akin has apologized for those comments. Is that going to be enough for voters?
No, well, I don't know if it's going to be enough for voters, but it's definitely not enough for members of his own party who have really been calling on him to resign from the race. I think folks are genuinely offended, but there's also a concern about what him staying in the race means for Republicans moving forward.
So is there any coming back from this, or is his campaign over? Was his campaign over from those comments?
That's always a hard question to answer, but I do think that the backlash Monday, especially from members of his own party, the minority leader in the Senate, Mitch McConnell, the party committee that funds Senate candidates, they basically all said, we're done with you. You need to resign. And I think that speaks very loudly. And for Akin to stay in, he's sort of a man with no home at this point.
Hey, let's talk a little bit more about that. Mitt Romney also offering a very strong rebuke. He said Congressman Akin's comments on rape are insulting, inexcusable, and frankly wrong. Like millions of other Americans, we found them to be offensive. So you just said it. If he stays in the race, where does his support come from?
That's a very good question. It's probably very slim at this point. There might be some folks in the anti-abortion wing who would be out there supporting him, but in terms of money, it would dry up. I mean, Akin's going to come out and say that he's got small donors that would come and support him, but in a state like Missouri, in a race this large against incumbent Claire McCaskill, he's going to need a lot more money and need national help, and everybody's pretty much said they'll bail on him.
The president made a surprise visit to the White House press room. Here's what he had to say.
The views expressed were offensive. Rape is rape. And the idea that we should be parsing and qualifying and slicing what types of rape we're talking about doesn't make sense to the American people, and certainly doesn't make sense to me.
President Obama favored among women voters. Will that comment by Akin, is that going to widen the gender gap?
Well, the longer he stays in the race, I think, you take the genuine outrage and the offense that folks have taken, and you look at the political part of this, I think there is a worry among Republicans that the longer Akin stays in this race, the bigger this becomes an issue for Republicans. This is not something that Mitt Romney wants to talk about. He wants to talk about the economy, which is really what he's sort of been running on. And so now he's going to have to talk about the abortion issue and these comments from Akin. And I think what you're seeing is Romney and other Republicans sort of rallying to say, get out of the race, stop making this an issue in this campaign.
You said the longer that he stays in, the longer it is an issue for Republicans long term. What are the consequences?
Well, the consequences are twofold. One, this is something that Mitt Romney is probably going to have to keep talking about, again, something that he doesn't want to talk about. But also, this Missouri Senate race, which is a very tight race, it's a race that Republicans were hoping to pick up from incumbent Democrat Claire McCaskill. If he stays in this race, they're pretty much writing it off, which could really impede their attempt at trying to take over the Senate. They only need to pick up a few seats to take over control of the Senate, and losing in Missouri is not going to help them in that cause.
And the president making that surprise visit to the White House press room, he took 4 questions, mostly from reporters from the National Press Corps. That's the most in 2 months. Any strategy here? Why did he do it now?
Well, I think he's been hearing calls from not only the national press, but from Republicans. And I think this is actually a good time for him to get out there and answer some questions. He hasn't been able to he hasn't really defended himself in front of the national press from charges from the Romney campaign. And this is an opportunity for him to get out there, talk about the issue that Akin brought up in terms of this abortion issue, talk to women voters, which are a swing vote in this election. So I think they looked at this as an opportune time to talk to the press.
And Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan back on the campaign trail together for the first time in about a week or so. How did they do?
Well, there's definitely more energy with Mitt Romney when Paul Ryan's around, and I don't know if that has to do with Paul Ryan's age or just the fact that Paul Ryan's an enthusiastic candidate. But that's out there. But unfortunately, this Akin thing, unfortunately for the Romney campaign, it really sort of stepped on their message today. And you didn't really hear much about what Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan said in New Hampshire, other than what they said in response to Todd Akin.
All right, we'll have to see what happens next. Steve Chaggaris, executive Washington editor for CBSNews.com. Steve, thank you so much.
Thanks.